G'day guys, welcome back to Beers and Break-Evens, our third episode for 2023. We're going to get stuck into some positional analysis today and for the next 2 weeks. Very exciting. We're going to go through fullbacks and hookers today. Two pretty premium spots, plenty to dive into. Brought to you once again by Blue Wealth Property. Tony and the team, they make investing in property easy for you. Reach out to them on all your social medias or get in contact with myself or Timmy and we can send you in the right direction. Also brought to you by Bloke in a Bar. Now remember, Kempy is going huge fucking overs for all of you. February 1st, he has got a 50% off sale for 50 hours, everything in store, and a couple of new shirts there. So plenty to go there, isn't there, Timmy? It is fucking unreal on Bloke in a Bar.
Mate, I've had the alarm set for Feb 1st for about 2.5 weeks since I heard this sale was coming up. So I've had to set aside a bit of budget. I'll be loading up.
Love it. Now, on that note, we mentioned it last week. We have had a few people and companies reach out, which has been fantastic. We are still on the hunt for another sponsor or two to join Beers and Break-Evens in 2023. So if you or you know someone or your boss or someone you think could be interested in it, send us an email, beersandbreakevens@gmail.com. We'll be going through all of those this week and reaching out to people. So very exciting. A great opportunity for people across the podcast, the YouTube here, obviously, and social media as well. Big opportunities there, a heap of views, downloads, everything to be shared around. And mate, SuperCoach, it's been a pretty big week. We obviously had the rule changes we'll get to soon, but we had a debut last night. Reminded me of Minicello 04, 03 just quietly. Unbelievable.
Mate, the SC Playbook podcast has hit the studio for the first time since we launched at the beginning of 2020, a month after launching. COVID hit and the world stopped, which was the NRL stopped for the first time since about World War II, so great timing. And yeah, so to fire off in the Bloke studio last night, the first podcast was really exciting. And speaking of that debut, the SuperCoach Spy, mate, was on deck, and we had a reveal of the big fella who the SC Playbook fans would be know a lot about. So very, very exciting one with that. So we're on YouTube, so if people could jump in and subscribe to the SC Playbook channel, it'll be greatly appreciated. We'll be doing that every Tuesday. If any of your 800,000 followers could jump on and give a subscription to SC Playbook, that'd be really appreciated, mate. And yeah, I think going throughout the season on that channel, we'll have obviously the SC Playbook podcast. The full Beers and Break-Even show will be on your channel. I'll be doing little clippets, the best bits of that, and throwing them on mine. So hopefully plenty to offer on that one.
Mate, I was sitting here yesterday thinking, geez, I wonder how Tim's going to go being the best looking on the panel. And then the Spy walked in and I thought, hey, he might be in third behind Daylight. Not bad, the Spy.
Mate, I've been sitting in second my whole life and nothing's changed.
Well, at least you weren't in third. The other one wasn't here, so we'll take that. Now, mate, rule changes. I think it's fair to say that SuperCoach is probably leaning towards the more casual player as it stands right now. I understand why they're doing it. I dropped my thoughts on the Rugby League Guru podcast earlier today, so you're going to have a listen to that if you want. I want to get your thoughts, though. I haven't actually spoken to you about it. What do you reckon?
The more I think about it, the more I like it, and the more I think about it, I think we might be making mountains out of molehills. 3 major bye rounds. In those 3 rounds, the change is that they take your best 13 scoring players from those 3 weeks. Mate, how many bye rounds have you had more than 13 players?
I always plan to.
Exactly.
Never
right.
do.
Yeah. So I think people are going, oh, you know, it brings the amateur SuperCoach into the game and all us diehards who put all the hours into it strategy-wise and the planning for Origin, we're the ones who lose out. To a small degree, yes, and the idea is they're obviously, you know, in a really good Origin buy planning week, if you can get 15 players and 15 decent players, you're on top of the pack for that week, and then the average player might have 9 or 10 on a good Origin week. So what it does is it bridges the gap between the best. And we say the best and the worst. I think there's probably a bit of a difference between the best and the worst. It's the people who put in those big hours like ourselves into it. So at the end of the day, people like ourselves who do put those hours in, we're going to be disadvantaged, and overall you're probably dropping a few ranking spots because of that. But at the same time, there's still advantage of getting 14, 15, 16 players on deck that week with good planning, because your 2, 3, 4 worst players, whatever it might be, they drop out of your team. Big advantage. But as far as I'm concerned, mate, we want as many people playing SuperCoach as we can get. And the back end of the season, there's a lot of zombie teams because a lot of players, super coaches, get to that origin period. Their teams are decimated. They can't field a team and they fall behind in the overall rankings a mile and they become the zombie teams, which we all hate. So as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a proactive move from those at SuperCoach HQ to get extra numbers for the longevity in the season. And my early take on it is that I like it. There's advantage for players like us, but it does bridge that gap between the people with the time and the people without the time.
Yeah, I think the argument that I'm hearing that it ruins SuperCoach and that there's no advantage for experienced players, bullshit. There might not be as big advantage, but there is still an advantage. And I mean, I look at that round 19. Mate, if you're a good SuperCoach player, tell me you can't take advantage of a week where Melbourne, Manly, Roosters, Penrith and the Cowboys aren't playing.
Exactly.
Please.
And then there's still all the strategy around the buy period of, do I sell off my guns to get an extra middle tier player for this week or the next week? And there's all these same decisions last. And as I said, mate, anyone who gets more than 13 in those weeks anyway, there's every chance they're pulling their side apart, which hurts them long term anyway. So it might actually help SuperCoaches a little bit, to be honest.
And I also think, mate, that with these buys and, a new club coming into the comp, if they're going to go as poorly as we think they're going to go, the extra trades that we've gained in general, I think that's where a lot of your planning has to go in.
Yeah, well, what is it? It's 4, obviously the game was announced, it launched officially 24 hours ago, a bit over now. 4 extra trades.
I believe it's 5.
5 extra trades.
Yeah.
So there's also 2 additional rounds of the season. So essentially we've got 1 more trade.
Yeah.
So that's where that balances out.
But I reckon that you can, a lot of your buy planning is also just going to be generally throughout the season, which I think you can take a big advantage of at different points.
I haven't done the deep dive into the weekly buy schedule and that just yet. It will be done. We'll get into the next couple of weeks. We'll do some feature sort of stuff on the website, but it's so intriguing that the different tactics around the weekly buys and not just the origin period buys, isn't it? Because there'll be big opportunities there. And that's it. We sit there and say, all right, the average player without the time to put into it, they're advantaged. They've also got to deal with 27 weeks worth of buys now.
Yep.
How many double ups are there going to be there in the middle of the origin period where post origin your fullback gets rested, let's say James Tedesco, and on the same week your backup fullback, whoever it might be, they're on the buy and someone doesn't plan for that, and then they don't have a fullback.
And I mean, I think as well, as much as it's a little bit easy now, round 16, there's 7 teams that have the bye. Round 17, there's 3 teams that have the bye. Round 18, we go back to 1, but then round 19, there's another 7 teams. So there's still plenty of planning to be had during that period without a fucking doubt. And if you've got the trades still at that point, I think you can still make some huge moves there. As much as other guys might have 13, they probably won't realistically. I still think there is a heap of ground to be made.
You watch SuperCoaches get burnt by having 2 fullbacks out, 2 5/8s out, 2 halfbacks out, whatever it might be, and having to burn a boost on a week where they didn't want to do it.
Yep.
It's going to be really, really fascinating.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see which SuperCoach players are able to hold their nerve during that period too. When to pull the trigger and when to hold your nerve. It's going to be a real balance.
Yeah, when you're sitting there, round 17, do I pull the trigger on Rocco Berry? He almost broke a tackle last week.
Oh, that was too real. All right, we're going to go through. Is that all on the rules, mate? You happy to?
Yeah, that was the only major change that they made. So I suppose the other thing to touch on, they have also said that they've started off with they've taken away a lot of dual positioning to start the season. The logic was that it's a hell of a lot easier to add dual positions as the preseason unfolds rather than take it away once teams are set up. So I wouldn't panic about players not getting duals just yet. There'll be a lot added in as the preseason unfolds.
Yeah,
maybe not a lot, but enough.
Yeah. Just on another topic too, as you said, you now have got that best 13. I noticed yesterday in my draft comp, I've added a new rule where you can make that a best 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10. So normally in a draft comp, you might get lucky and it's 10 versus 4. All of a sudden now it can only be capped at your best 7.
It's great for draft, isn't it?
Mate, it's fucking unreal for draft. They've actually, credit to SuperCoach. I know everyone gives them a lot of shit, and I quite often sometimes think they don't put enough effort into draft. Some of the options they've provided this year are unreal. they've definitely leveled up that platform. So really, really good to see. We'll have on the 9th of February, trial start that day. I'm going to have the weekly rubdown boys. They're going to be down here at the bar. We're doing a big SuperCoach draft deep dive, so stay tuned for that. You draft players.
Rogue, I can't wait. I might sit in the one-man audience.
I think you will be. I've got a feeling you might be.
Yeah.
That's going to be unreal.
I'm looking forward to it.
You haven't met the boys yet, have you?
I haven't. They had me on... How long have they been around for?
A while.
Yeah, they had me on a podcast when I first launched SC Playbook and had a good yarn with them and just sunk beers and talked footy. So, I mean, heaps different to what we do here, but it was a good yarn.
Yeah. I don't think they liked you too much, but that's okay.
I haven't been back, so...
Shock me. All right, mate, fullback. Really interesting position. We spoke about our teams last week. The guys that we like, I think that we both have the same too as it stands right now. Teddy, a bit of a myth around that he starts slow. Not realistically. He might not be hitting his hundreds in the first 4 or 5 weeks over the last few years, but far from starting slow. Plays the Dolphins in that first game. Very, very appealing. Has a bye reasonably early, but I think Teddy, just a premium player you need to have. Yeah,
I think so. And the other factor there is that I hate to say this, but I've got the lowest of expectations for the Dolphins this year on the squad that they've assembled. So I'll be targeting... I mean, things can change very quickly, but the plan will be to target matchups against them. And we look at round one, that's traditionally probably a low-scoring SuperCoach round. It has been in the past because teams are dusting off the cobwebs, finding their feet, getting the combinations going. It can be really hard to get a decent skipper and whatnot. Well, the Roosters against the Dolphins, Teddy lock and load because, that could be the week. He could start with a 150 in that.
Well, truly.
So... And there's just big questions. I remember the last year we started and we were looking at fullbacks and there were so many great options to go with. This year, there's a few question marks around all of them, as far as I'm concerned, except Teddy. Teddy's the only one that comes in, and my only question mark would be, coming off a World Cup, does he start a little bit not underdone, but I suppose tired, fatigued? Probably not. It's Teddy, so he is in my side.
Oh, I think it will be something that we need to keep track of towards the end of the year, that for a lot of these guys coming off COVID and everything, this will be their biggest season of footy. For guys that played in a World Cup, come into the NRL, play an Origin series, then have to play an extra 2 weeks. I think it's something we need to be aware of, especially with these, your 80-minute hookers like Harry Grant, for example. Like, he's in for the biggest 12 months of his career by far and away. So we'll talk about all that when we get there. My question to you with Teddy, you said all these other guys have got question marks. Is there any question mark over Teddy as far as Joey Manu's role? Are we worried that Manu could steal some points off Teddy now that he's got that role fully sorted? I think you're going to see a lot of Joey Manu this year.
Not really, mate. I'm so fascinated to see how the Roosters come out in round one and how they attack, because it's easy to say we'll get a roaming Joey, and that's what we all want to see. But when he's roaming and Teddy's roaming, Sammy Walker's flicking both sides of the field, Cheese is going nuts at dummy half. Like, something has to give, particularly, I think, attacking in the red zone, in the other side's 20 metres, attacking the try line. Joey has to hold his shape. Like, at times he will roam and come in, but more often than not, because they've got so many tackle moments, he's going to have to hold his shape. So where it matters in the 20-metre zone, I think Teddy, I'm not concerned.
Yeah, but I mean, in saying that, like, he wasn't really holding his shape at the end of last year.
Yeah.
Like Suaalii hardly got any ball in attacking zone because he wasn't holding his shape. Yeah. My worry is that I think the Roosters are going to be a very good football team. I think they're going to be a lot better than a lot of sides. And I think that Joey Manu, in those games where they're going big, I reckon he could be the one that takes a lot of fucking points.
Interesting.
I'm still going to start with Teddy, don't get me wrong. But I think if I have got a question mark, if there's going to be a reason why in round 10 I'm going, Tedesco's been a little bit underwhelming, I think it will be because of Joey Manu.
Yeah. I think he's going to have to hold shape a bit more than we think. And I'm not too concerned for Teddy. The concern is obviously a lot of mouths to feed. Do the points go to Kiri, Walker, Manu, Cheese, all these sorts of blokes? But I'm also backing the Roosters. I think they're probably my tip to win the premiership at this early stage. And I think they're just going to massacre a few sides. And even if other players are getting points, I think there'll be enough in it for Teddy.
Isn't it going to be scary with this Roosters side when you got Cheese Manu jumping into dummy half as they do. Like, they could have sets of 6 where those two touch the ball and they go 80 metres.
And Suoliti.
Yeah. Fucked.
And Tupu, like, frightening.
Especially if Suoliti is playing left centre, he'll only be closer to the ruck.
Their team's so good.
Scary. So, yeah, James Tedesco, I believe he's got the bye in round 4 it is. There are a couple of guns with byes earlier that we'll talk about over the next 2 weeks. The bye in round 4, does that worry you at all, or do you just wear it because he's so good?
Just wear it, mate. I think from round 3 onwards, they do have some tougher games, but I'm happy to basically lock and load Teddy until maybe a sell around Origin. As you said, maybe managing around that time, but until that point, I'm pretty happy to lock him in. Yeah.
All right. Let's move to our next guy. And we sort of spoke about him last week, and we will kick off with a question here from you guys at Declan Waterhouse. I know Declan, a proud mascot Jet. Do you suggest starting with Tom Trbojevic or trade him in later? We're both under the understanding, or we believe, that we won't see Turbo round 1. They have the bye round 2. I think you'll see him in round 3. Is there a world where you start with Turbo if he's not there round 1, or do you wait until later?
I don't think so. Especially there's, like, 2 rounds is a long time early in the season.
It's a long time at fullback.
Yeah, the thing is, he's priced at, did you say the Roosters have got the bye round 3 or 4?
4. Penrith have got it 3.
Okay. No, I couldn't start with him if he doesn't. 2 weeks there. It's such an integral position, probably the highest scoring SuperCoach position in recent seasons. So if you do start with him, that's a high scoring position that, you know, you could have a Latrell Mitchell or Scott Drinkwater or someone there. So, no.
I think the talent in the position dictates that you can't wait your first 2 weeks. He's going to, you know, and for all you know, you don't know how Manly and Turbo are going to play either.
And that's it. What's not to say that if they can't say, look, he'll be back round 3, so we're going to sit in the first week 1, bye round 2. There's no guarantee that he plays round 3. Does he come back at centre for the first month? Do they say, mate, just sit at centre and hold your position and just get some Ks in the legs? No. But if he's there round 1 at the price, I'm starting him.
It's hard to turn down, isn't it? Very, very hard to turn down. Latrell Mitchell, got him in the gun category, 889,000. Absolutely fucked us sideways last year. Oh. We sat here and
cried into our bloke tears.
Oh, we just tried to pretend like it wasn't happening. It was crazy, and it cost us. I mean, all things considering, neither of us ever owned Latrell. I think we did pretty well considering how fucking good he went.
Yeah.
It's scary to think where we could have ended up if we just would have bit the bullet.
Don't wonder. Just move on, mate. That's what I do.
But yeah, an 85-point average last year. I look at Latrell. He's got a really tough start that people keep talking about, but we also sat here for the last 10 weeks going, well, fuck, he's match-proof. He's match-up proof. He was just in such good form last year. And for me, I look at Latrell and I go, you know, I look at what he did last season. And I think he didn't have a full preseason. He spent half the season in America. This year, he's been back at training for a couple of weeks. I think he looks fitter than what he ever has in a preseason at the moment. We'll get to see him in the All-Stars game as well, which I can't wait for. Latrell Mitchell with a full preseason. And I feel like, mate, the penny dropped for Latrell last year when he realised the influence he can have and just how fucking good he can be. It's a scary prospect. Yeah,
I think the difference this year around that draw, there's a couple. And when we're looking at his buy credentials for round 1 is that he was early 600K to start when he came back from injury last season. So he started year 720, got down to as low as 610K. He lingered around that 600K for 3 weeks and just went bonkers against tough opposition. Saying that, round 24 against the Cowboys, 76. Round 25 against the Roosters, 45. So he starts this year at almost 900K. He's not 600K. If he was 600K with that draw, I'd be like, sweet, we'll lock him in. But you're paying a lot for him. Coming up against the Sharks, Panthers, Roosters, Sea Eagles, Storm. Like, it's almost the 5 hardest games you could get to start the season. My other concern is, even if he does come in fit, we'll get one of the stat gurus out there, maybe Adam DeRusi in the next week or two, to have a look at the stats around SuperCoach scoring the first 3 to 5 rounds of the season, because my feeling is that it's always traditionally low scoring. teams, as I said, they blow the cobwebs out. They find combinations. Teams are out there. They're full strength. They're fit. They're ready to go.
It's all about defense.
Yeah,
I've spoken about defense for 6 months.
And that's the thing. It doesn't seem to open up till maybe round 5 onwards. So I just don't like the softer teams in the competition. As I said, I'm going to exclude the Dolphins, but that we've seen in the past, early on, the Tigers, maybe Warriors, Bulldogs, etc. I just think that the defence will be up early in the season. And then I don't think we're going to see probably the big blowouts until, round 6, 7, 8 onwards. So, as I said, we'll dig up some data around that in coming weeks. But for that reason, I don't think Latrell's going to have his blowout against an understrength Warriors team in round 23 where he puts 150 on them. I might be wrong, but I'm willing to go against him.
And I mean, every year you do see, one or two, like take the Newcastle Knights, for example, last year. We were sitting here in round 2 going, they might be premiership contenders. Round 5 we're going, no, they're fucked again.
Yeah.
Like it all changes very, very quickly. I agree with you about the start. Anything else on Latrell Mitchell, mate?
Not really, mate. As I said, we were burnt by going against him with his draw last season, so there is an argument for him to go as a pod player then because we know how good he is. If he does start on fire and just destroys sides and he goes in excess of $1 million, he might be the one that got away very early on, but I'll be going against him at this stage.
So we're doubting Latrell Mitchell again,
I know. It's going to be a long pre-season thinking about it.
There'll be some big beers and break-evens fans shaking their head at the moment. Mate, another guy that has slipped into the gun category this year, my boy, Scotty Drinkbloke. Absolutely loved him last year. He's got a fantastic start this season. The Cowboys draw is sensational. I love that there's no Hamiso there anymore, so I'm not panicked in the slightest about him losing that role at fullback. He's a great pod to start with. As we said, there is so much talent in this fullback role. I do worry that if Latrell Mitchell plays 80%, does that maybe beat Scott Drinkwater's 100%? Same as James Tedesco, these sort of guys. But with that draw, if you believe the Cowboys are going to be the same side, I think we said a few weeks ago they leave Queensland once in the first 5 weeks. It's going to be hot weather up there. He's going to be used to it. Other teams coming up there. It could be a big start for him. 71 average last season. Where do you sit on Drinky, mate?
It's interesting because if Tommy Turbo doesn't play until round 3, and let's say we're all starting with Teddy, I don't think there's a standout candidate as second fullback. And we've also said 5 minutes ago that it's such a key position for players with high ceilings.
Yep.
So it's a position you're happy to pay up for early on. So where does Drinky come in that mix? The first 2 games of the season, hardly bad, but Raiders and Broncos could be defensive grinds. Cowboys could come out and belt them both. Who knows? Then it goes into Warriors, Titans, Bulldogs, Dolphins, Warriors, and then Knights. It's a hell of a draw.
I mean, in saying that, like your Canberra Raiders, traditionally, they don't tend to hit form until mid-season sort of parts. Going up to North Queensland is going to be a tough fucking gig. Brisbane Broncos, is that game in Brisbane or not? It's at Brisbane, yeah. So you got to remember the week before that, they're going to play the Panthers round 1 at Bluebet. So that's going to be a bruising affair too. So yeah, you're right. Those first 2 matchups aren't perfect, but the conditions and everything, I think,
they're
are
not
very
Roosters and Panthers like.
Yeah, and I think situationally, I think it just favours the Cowboys.
So yeah. I don't mind Drinky for that reason. He's priced on a 71-point average, which is, look, if I was guessing what he would average this season, I would say 70 to 75. So I think he's priced around about his true value. But the point is, you could play in those first 7 rounds, and then when the draw gets harder, you could flip him to hopefully Latrell Mitchell, who may have lost 150K.
And that's where when you look at Drinkwater, he's about 150K on the dot cheaper than Latrell Mitchell.
Yeah.
So
it could hopefully be almost, well, you could hopefully make money off it after about 6-7 rounds.
Hopefully.
Yeah, so I don't mind him, but just big one on the watch list for the time being.
Yep, agreed. Let's have a look at some mid-range sort of guys, and one of them is AJ Brimson. He is dual position. I would tend to think that if you're going to start with AJ, you'd probably start with him at 5'8", but people are considering him at fullback, 673K, a 64 average last year. It sounds like he could be playing fullback. We've seen Justin Holbrook come out in the last 24 hours and say nothing's set in stone. I question whether that's just damage control, to be honest with you. I don't know why Pete Bedell would make up that.
Yeah.
He's got runs on the board, Holbrook, for making decisions way too early. Did it last season, so I question that. I tend to think Brimson probably will be in the one to start the season. I went back to his games last year when playing fullback in 2022, 52-point average, so 12 less than what he's priced at.
You beat me to it, you bastard. I did that.
Have you got his? Yeah.
I did that exact stat this morning. I was very happy with it. You beat me to it.
Well,
I had 53, so
53, yeah. Carry the one. In 2021, he had a 61.
Well.
Yeah, that one as well. What'd you have there?
61.
Yeah, I had 61 too. Yeah. Well done. You got that one. 61 average at fullback. Still below what he's priced at, mate. Yes, I think the Titans improved, but how much do they improve? I don't know.
You've taken the wind out of my sails.
I'm sorry about that. Not really.
Yeah, good to see you learning at least. You're starting to put a bit of effort into this show, so it's a good stat though. Because it's significantly below his 64 average last season. And obviously, if it was 53 in 7 games last year and he was 64 average for the season, well, at 5'8", he must have averaged onwards of 70. So, yeah, it's a big deterrent. He starts the season with games against the Tigers and Dragons, both away, not ideal, but good matchups. Into the Storm, Cowboys and bye. So, I don't know. I just want to see more. I want to see what the Titans can produce. If I had a lot of confidence in the Titans to come out and be a vastly improved side, I'd be like, all right, Brimo can benefit off the back of that. But on those fullback stats and just a few question marks around them, I think we can avoid at this stage. But I can see the pod play there.
For me, if I'm looking for a mid-range sort of pod there, I think I would be more than happy to take a punt, 140k less, and look at Kalen Ponga, mate. Finished last year with a 50-point average. That's where he's priced. He's obviously got the calf injury to start this preseason. We've got the All-Stars in 2 weeks. Looks like he will miss out on that game. I'm hoping he's there round 1. Newcastle have a pretty nice start to the season. Good matchups. The first game, to be fair, is against the Warriors, which I like, but it is in New Zealand, so that'll be a big game for Warriors returning home. Or the shit fight's over, so I'm sure they'll be up for that one. But mate, KP with a 50-point average. It's the first time in 5 years he's averaged under 68. So, and I think Hastings and Adam Elliott will be fantastic for KP. Whether he's playing 5'8" or fullback, he's going to play both sides of the ruck. So I think it'll be a similar sort of fullback role. I would much prefer KP over Brimson, but Brimson much more likely to be conscious, uninjured, etc., etc.
Yeah, KP, to show my sort of the upside in KP, he cost me quite infamously.
Here we go again. Jesus.
Yeah, well, the point is he cost me a lot of spots last season over the trail, that decision when he got knocked out. But I would still go back to him this year at the price because he's so cheap if I knew he was fit. Like, let's say he doesn't play preseason, which at this stage looks likely. Calf injury, is it? So
calf, yep.
Always a little bit touch and go. Those ones can flare up at any time. So if he wasn't injured and he played preseason, I would lock him in at that price.
If he's named for round 1 and we get word that he's goal kicking, I will have him in my side.
You will?
I will take a punt on him, yep. If he's there round 1 and he's goal kicking at 530k, I will take a punt on him. I won't take a punt on him at fullback, to be fair. I think it's fair to assume he will have 5'8" by the time the season comes around. O'Brien's already come out and said that he's going to be playing 6. We've been talking about it for a while. He'll be named at 6 round 1. So I would assume that he will be fullback 5'8".
Yeah. So,
I would be seriously considering him at 5'8".
So let's say he and Tommy Turbo named for round 1. You've got them both at 5'8" and fullback. Would you be a little bit nervous?
Sorry, I had another asterisk on that. Well, that's assuming Turbo's not there round 1. I'd be shocked if Turbo plays round 1.
Look, I can see my arm being twisted in the next 5-6 weeks, but oh God, he's going down a lot.
Sorry, even if Turbo's playing, I would have KP at 6. So if there's a world where I could get KP and Turbo and spend $1 million to get both of them, sweet.
Yeah. He's a great price.
Oh mate, unreal price, absolutely unreal. And like last year was a shit fight for him. This year could be as well, but I don't know. I think Newcastle are going to do a little bit better than what people are anticipating.
Just quickly on Tommy Turbo, averaged 61 last season, but because he only played a handful of games, he's priced on an average of 55 points. Yep. And so the way I work that out for anyone who's sort of thinking similar, it's a big part of my sort of pre-season planning for these blokes, and we'll do it shortly with Josh Hodgson as well. But when you work out what average they priced on, basically I just look at what they're priced at this year, a player around them who's a similar price. I can't remember who it was around him. It might have been Murray Taulagi or someone. And then you look at what Taulagi averaged last year, which must have been 55. I'll double check that it was Taulagi.
If you just take their price,
Yeah.
you divide it by 10,500, that'll give you their average.
From last season.
Yeah. No, sorry, that's what they're priced at.
Yeah, so and is that what, sorry, does that take in players who have had a price reduction for only playing a few games?
Well, that's what the prices are set at this year. Every point, I think it's worth $10,523 or something. So if you times if you divide their price by that number, it will give you what they're priced at for this season.
Yeah, but that wouldn't take in the reduction for blokes who played, like Josh Hodgson, who played one game.
It tells you what their price, what average they're priced at.
Yeah.
So it can give you an indication of where they can go, et cetera,
Yeah,
et cetera. Yeah. So anyway, well, that's how I worked it out, and I've got the exact same numbers at you. Turbo, 577K, priced at a 55 average, but averaged, 61 in 2022. Yeah.
55 average is so cheap.
Yeah, that's half time.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.
That's like for him, that could be 3 sets.
Yeah.
And the rest. Which is insane. Now, mate, talking of Kalen Ponga, one guy that I've been sent in a few teams, which I can't quite grasp what the thinking is here. Lachie Miller is rumoured to join the Newcastle Knights to play fullback. I think you will see that over the next week or two. Mate, he's almost 600K. He's another guy. He's priced at an average of 56. He averaged 63 in 2022. In the games that he played fullback, there wasn't a stack of them. He averaged 66 in a Sharks team that was a top 4 side. Going to Newcastle with KP, I think it'll be a similar situation to Latrell Mitchell at South Sydney. I think he will collect all the attacking stats in this side. I think that people are having a big punt going Lachie Miller at 600K, not knowing his role, coming into a new team with a completely new spine.
Yeah, I think it's madness. And let's have a look at the 6 teams that he played last season to get that average of 63. In a Sharks outfit who had a really good draw last season, were flying. He played the Titans in round 11. He then came in for the final 5 rounds of the season between fullback and wing. He played the Dragons, Tigers, Manly, post Jersey Gate, who when they'd shit the bed by that point, Bulldogs and Knights. Like essentially the easiest games you could have got that season. 2 of his better scoring games were on the wing for scores of 79 and 69. At fullback, scores of 88, 30, 82. So I think it's very much inflated by the opposition that he played, playing in a good team. He comes to the Knights, who struggled last season. Big gamble at that price.
Huge
not
gamble.
for me.
Yeah. Now I've got another question from another listener. Left field shouts at fullback. Is Parham for anyone else worth a look in as a backup? That one comes from Oscar Riley. Thank you, Oscar, for sending that in. I guess we'll just take this off the dome, and I think more experienced SuperCoach players would have assumed this, but for those new to the game, guys that are dual position fullback CTW, for example, if you can fit them in and they've got CTW, you put them in CTW every fucking day of the week.
Yeah, there's too many good, straight fullback options to go for, and the scoring from fullbacks is just so much better in your centre position. The centre position's so volatile. Fullbacks, far more assured, comparatively speaking. So if you can slot them into your CTW, particularly cheap, if we're both starting with premium fullbacks, well, if you can get maybe a Hayes Perham or Chancellor Clockstad, whoever it might be at centre, that's the play. Yeah,
and so Hayes Perham, we'll talk about him when we get to CTWs, but just to touch on him quickly, he's 390K, so he's almost 400K, which isn't as scary as what it was last year. The prices have changed a little bit. That's still a 35-point average. You have a look at his 80-minute games from last year. He had a base stat average of 19. So, we'll talk about him more when we get there. Playing fullback, we don't quite know what that's going to look like. But I personally think there's a number of guys available at CTW that are playing fullback this year that people are getting very excited about that I'm a little bit nervous of. Hamiso comes to mind. Charlie Staines comes to mind. Chance comes to mind. I don't think they're going to be these 55, 60-point fullbacks that people are assuming.
Going from gun teams to lesser
Tyrell
teams.
Sloan could be the mascot of this group.
Going from gun teams to lesser teams, it's like, well, sweet, you're playing 80 minutes at fullback. Doesn't mean you're going to score points. So, yeah, I'm with you, mate. There's a lot of traps around that position.
Mate, is there any other fullbacks there? Dylan Edwards is one that we haven't mentioned just yet. I've seen a lot of people are keen on Edwards. You had a stat before about his last 10 weeks or so?
So in his final 11 games last season, he averaged 76 points and didn't score under 60.
Wow.
Pretty good reading. So, look, again, he's playing a Penrith side that have just come off 2 premierships and hardly lost a game. I'll say this nearly every episode leading into the preseason, but where's your value to start the year? Who's going to make money? Does Dylan Edwards increase on that average this season? Probably not. If he does, might be 3 or 4 points worth at best. So, nah.
Yeah. And I was just saying to Tim before pre-show, like you look at those last 11 weeks, some of them were during the Origin period when all the boys were away. He was there. I mean, there was that game against Canberra where he just really took control. That was one of those 11. He then got to the last 5 weeks, and I think it was Luai and Cleary. They were both out for X amount of weeks. So I don't think Dylan Edwards is ever a bad option, and it didn't shock me that one of those stats didn't fall under 60. I don't think he'll ever go sub 50, 55. But I just think there are so many premium options in fullback that you should be looking elsewhere.
Yeah, the only other one was, and I won't be starting, I don't think I'll be starting with you. He'll come out and kill the trials and I'll get excited, but if Reece Walsh was kicking goals...
I knew it was coming. Yeah.
I just think he's so good, mate.
Mate, to be fair, there's actually a lot of questions about Reece Walsh, so I think you've wet the whistle.
He's 550k, and I suppose he obviously loses the goal kicking to Adam Reynolds. If the Broncos weren't a basket case, and I was sort of... They'd had a smooth sailing off season. I was confident they'd come in and start the season well. I'd be genuinely tempted because I think he'll kill it. But with the off-field noise at that club, Walsh coming to a new team, although albeit knows the surroundings, but there's just enough question marks and red flags to not do it.
You might get the annual groin injury from Adam Reynolds to start the season that maybe gets him goal kicking, but still a lot.
Yeah, and that's like, it could easily happen. So if that does occur, I will be very tempted. But then, how many points a game do the Broncos lose when they lose Adam Reynolds?
Yep,
just
exactly
getting around the park. So
yeah. So I think that just about does us for fullbacks, mate.
All good, mate.
Yeah. All right. Let's dive into
Your favourite position, mate.
hookers. Yes. Saturday night specials. Mate, we spoke last week. You're very heavy on Harry Grant being close to a must-have guy or a guy that, you're going to want him at some point. He is the best hooker in SuperCoach. There's no doubt about that. There's a stat floating around last week about his average with and without Pappy that was pretty damning. Whether Pappy plays or not remains to be seen. It's not looking great at the moment. We actually didn't mention him in fullbacks, but I just, we'll talk about him when he's back on the field. Even if he is back on the field in round one at a fucking billion, no thank you.
Yeah, I think he's the top price player in SuperCoach and doesn't have a kneecap at the moment, essentially. So
yeah, it's a tough gig. Hasn't run yet. So, but yeah, Harry Grant is obviously a keeper. This year, there's no Brandon Smith floating around. You would have to assume that he is going to play huge minutes. I think he'll play 80 minutes 100% to start the season. As we said off the top, I wouldn't be surprised if after Origin, if maybe they ease him off a little bit, bring in a Pizzette, a Wishart, one of these guys, Nicarima maybe, just because it's a huge 12 months for Harry Grant. It is obviously becoming a trend in rugby league that your hookers don't play 80 minutes. There's only a couple of 80-minute players left. I reckon there'll be even less at the end of this season, so we'll talk about them. But Harry Grant, you have to spend a bit of coin on him, 816K, priced at a 78-point average based on last year. You're still locked in?
Yeah, locked and loaded, mate. A few stats around him. The big one with Harry Grant is he'll often be eased through the Origin period for obvious reasons. So I did the stats around his start to last season up until 2 games before Origin and 2 games after the Origin period. He started last year and in 7 games averaged 95 points. In the final... What was it? He finished the season, the final 5 games of the season, with an 81-point average in and around that Origin period. So from 2 games before to 2 games after, in 7 games, he averaged 57 points. There are a few fewer minutes in there. Not a lot. Like, he played decent enough minutes throughout that period, but there are a few sort of 60-minute games where he got an early breather. So 57 points around that. So essentially, I think he can average anywhere from, 80 to 100 to start the season. My only concern with Harry Grant is, how good is this forward pack going to be? Do they not get the momentum? Are they slower through the guts? If he doesn't get the quick play balls, how effective can he be? That being said, their forward pack wasn't that good last year, particularly their middles. Like, they lose Kafusi and Bromwich on the edges, but their middles haven't really changed.
Well, for me,
Cheese gone.
Cheese is a huge one. Now, I said before, no Cheese, that's great for Grant. No Cheese is also a fucking disaster for Grant as well, because you watch Melbourne Storm, how they play. As soon as he takes a hit up, the entire spine just floods the middle and goes with Grant. And that's where he creates so many attacking points. I look at that forward pack. Yes, it wasn't great last year, but we both know the impact a player like Cheese has when he plays through the middle. I look at their side now and I look at it and I go, okay, who's the guy that Harry Grant's going to get off the back of his play the balls? No one's really standing out to me, to be honest with you.
Sort of Nas.
But even Nas is a big body, but he's fucking slow to play the ball.
Yeah.
Takes him a week to play the football.
And he's also a 45-minute player.
Yeah. So that's, and I think that Nas is going to be incredibly important to this side. I think that you'll see a bit more second phase footy from the Melbourne. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them make more errors this year, because they're going to have to create a little bit more. That's my only worry with Harry Grant, that no Brandon Smith. And if something happens that Nas we need to remember, Nas dodged about 18 fucking suspensions last year, and I have no idea how. He had about 9 lives. Yeah. If they lose Nas, I love Christian Welsh, but he's coming back from an Achilles injury. We don't know the sort of guy he's going to be, and he's more of your old school front rower. That's my only worry with Harry Grant, but I also think that he is good enough to overcome those challenges.
It's interesting. It's a good point you make. Do they, to alleviate the loss of Brandon Smith and there's probably some issues around the middles, do they do that? Do they look to offload more and create the second phase to bring Munster and Hughes into the game? And, Harry Grant, that is where they will get quick play the balls, Harry Grant off the back of that. So interesting if they do change up the style, and it makes sense to me, mate. And, that's the risk. Do they get these quick play the balls for Harry Grant? And as you said, I think he's good enough to do damage, even if they are a bit slow through the guts, but... yeah, look, I'm happy to lock him in. He's so good.
Yeah, fair shout.
I often look at Guru as a judge of, and there's no metric to this. Stat gurus out that'll hate it, but when I'm looking at trades, who are players that you're scared to not own?
Yeah.
And when you're watching them, for whatever reason, I think it's such a good measure of a trade in or out target, and Harry Grant's right up there. Like, not owning him, he's just terrifying. So.
I've got a list of 10, 12, 13 hookers here. There's one that scares me.
Yeah.
There is only one that scares me, and it's Harry Grant.
Yeah.
If I had any of the other hookers and I was playing any of the other hookers, good as gold. I'm fine.
And what kills you in SuperCoach, it's in the modern day of SuperCoach with these big blowout scores and big 150-plus scores, it's the players with these ceilings. And you have to chase these guys with ceilings. And Harry Grant in that hooker position... he's probably the only one that you're like, he can probably go 130, 140 plus on his day.
Yeah. And I think that's also, like, when I talk Harry Grant, like, for me, coming up against him, I think it's almost scarier than when you used to come up against Cam Smith. Cam Smith will get 70, 80. You know what he's going to get every week. He won't go for those 140s. But Harry Grant, he can score 100 in 3 or 4 sets. If they're on the front foot and they're winning the ruck.
With just shit tries from dummy half.
Yeah, awful. Yeah, just getting on the front foot. So, Harry Grant... obviously, the best hooker in SuperCoach. I think that we will all own him at some point, whether you start with him or you work your way up there, whatever works for you. Now, we mentioned with Harry Grant, Brandon Smith arriving at the Sydney Roosters, 478K, priced at a 45 average, cheap as chips for a guy like Brandon Smith. Arrives at the Chooks. We don't know what his role is going to look like. I'm confident in saying he won't be an 80-minute hooker. Very confident in that. I think... he's going to average about 55 to 60 minutes. Do you think that's fair?
Yep, I would say similar. Probably close to 60, but I think 55 to 60, and averaged 49 minutes last year, so there's an immediate bump up.
And I mean, we have a look at that rule that they brought in. If we've read that correctly, which it sounds so stupid that I can't believe it sometimes. He is a guy that in the early weeks, he could score 1,000 tries. The 2 feet on the line. I've got him in my side. I've gone with another cheapie as we spoke about last week, but I just think Brandon Smith, you're obviously too scared to have Harry Grant. I'm also a little bit too scared not to have Brandon Smith. Not in the same category, but if he goes on one of those try-scoring runs at sub 500k, which at the Roosters v the Dolphins week 1 with that rule.
We've spoken before about how the Roosters are going to attack this season and why Cheese doesn't make a lot of sense just with all the attacking weapons and how they're probably more suited to a Sam Verrills who just gives early ball to Manu, Teddy, Walker, Keary. And we've spoken about how do they just play, knock them down through the middle with Cheese leading the charge through the guts, then they just feast off the back of that. If that is what they're doing and they just demolish sides, namely the Dolphins round 1, like, as I said, he could feast. And with that, both feet on the line, I can see them changing it before the season starts when the preseason rolls out. But if it doesn't, round 1, Dolphins, and blokes are expected to have both feet behind the line with Cheese darting at their knees, good luck. Yeah. So I think, so he averaged in 2021 as a 9, 68 points in 60 minutes. There was 11 tries in that, so probably inflated. In that 2021 season, there was obviously Harry Grant there as well. It was obviously a dual sort of lock hooker role, was it?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's, when you look at that number, that's obviously a little bit skewed, so probably don't take too much into that one. Yeah, I'm, again, just as you said, scared not to own. And you look at even playing a bit of lock in that time, well, he could play a similar role with Jake Turpin on the bench at the Roosters playing lock. So that dual hooker lock role.
Yeah.
The Roosters, I said, they're going to be so good this year. I think they will be. Why can't he score a shitload of tries again?
I definitely think that he can, mate. 100%. And, mate, I reckon he can score a shitload of tries even if he's not a hooker.
Yeah.
In that side, realistically. And I think that's the other thing that worries me about Cheese about him playing hooker is that when it was Connor Watson, he's not really a 9. Now they've got Turpin in the side where you would assume Turpin's going to be in that role. If they go for a Drew Hutchinson, that changes everything, but I'm pretty confident it'll be Turpin. That worries me a little bit more for his minutes. Mate, Damien Cook. I sort of sat there at the end of last year going, Cook was a little bit disappointing. You know, wasn't the full-time 9 for New South Wales anymore, lost his Kangaroos jersey. You sit down, you look at his stats. He finished with a 75 average last year. I think 3 behind Harry Grant. Very impressive. So he is priced pretty high. I went through some stats last night to have a look. Essentially, from when Latrell Mitchell returned, the last 10 weeks of last season, he averaged 80 points. So one of my dot points was he's aging. Then I went down and did those numbers and thought, is he?
Yeah.
80 points to finish last season. Pretty impressive.
Fit as a fiddle, little rabbit, isn't he? 75 average last season. The 2 seasons prior, 66 and 70. Another one where that draw, huge deterrent. So obviously last year was comfortably his highest average in a while. I think 75 to 80 max. Man, my throat is gone. No, I'll be back. I think 80, like, absolute max. So I just don't see any value in him. Like, even Grant, I can see him averaging 5 to 10 more than he's averaging. And I'm more confident of Grant matching last year's average than I am Damien Cook. And such a tough draw. And
I just think at any given moment, as much as I love Damien Cook and South Sydney love him, I think with Harry Grant, he's the only 9 there. I look at South Sydney. Havili's still floating around. Mamazelis is meant to be the next thing. For an extra 25k, just buy Grant. It will be interesting if during the Origin period, if, for example, a Reece Robson manages to get his way into this New South Wales side, and Harry Grant's obviously playing Origin, Damien Cook could become very interesting during that period.
Big time, yeah.
Very much so. So
Damien Cook's a bloke, I mean, this is sort of not a surprise to say, but I can see being as my pairing hooker to Harry Grant for the long term of the season, particularly getting through the Origin period. But I'm happy to wait on him.
Yeah.
And wait till either he drops or I can a cow's fattened up that I can move up to him.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's move to Reece Robson.
A lot of hype around the preseason.
Lot of hype about Reece Robson. 678k priced at a 65 average from last season. When he played 80-minute games, he averaged 70 points, so credit to him. And mate, I had a look. Even, he had that try scoring run where he scored, 6 tries, 7 weeks, 5 tries, 6 weeks, something along those lines. I had a look after that, mate. After that try and scoring run, in the 8 games after that, he only scored 2 tries. Still averaged 68 points. So, I mean, the numbers are there. I don't know. There's something about Robson that I just can't put him in that same sort of category as your Cooks, your Grants, these sort of guys. I think that there's other guys that are cheaper than Robson that you can make more money on if that's your objective. I don't know. It's one of those. It's more of a gut call for me not to go Robson. What are your thoughts?
I'm pretty similar to you, mate. The numbers are hard to argue with, and I was the exact same. I thought, he'll be inflated this year due to that try-scoring run, but then I went back and crunched the numbers, and in 11 games where he played 80 minutes and didn't score a try, he still averaged 61.
Yep.
So it's like, well, he doesn't necessarily need to score. You look at the Cowboys' draw early on. Why can't he keep scoring tries through that period if the Cowboys hit their straps again? A few concerns, I suppose. 5 of the first 6 games for the Cowboys are in Queensland. Good thing on one hand. On the other hand, as you mentioned earlier, hot. 3 of those games are at 5:30, so it's still going to be hot at that time.
Yep.
Last year in his first 7 games, he averaged 48 points in 64 minutes. So, yeah, if he goes back to 80 to start the year, there'll be an uptick on that, but how significant? I don't know. I feel comfortable running Grant and Cheese at this stage, so I'm happy to bypass him. But with the draw in particular, there's no reason why. I'd say he could be an early season pod, but there's a lot of talk around him, so he might start pretty popular.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be in pod category. A lot of people very keen on him, mate. A lot of people swearing by him as well.
Yeah, I don't really get it. I'd prefer if Grant hits the skids first 2 rounds, and for all those reasons, he's not getting the opportunities behind the Melbourne pack, and Robson kills it, I'm happy enough to go Grant down to Robson and free up some cash for other trades. And then if it all goes to plan and Grant does kill it, Cheese starts well enough, upgrade Cheese to Robson round 7-8 sort of thing.
Yeah.
Cheese will be a borderline keeper at hooker, I think, but I see the Cheese to either Robson or Cook trade about round 6-7 happening.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess the other thing with Robson is that I genuinely do think he's a chance to come into this Origin side. You got Harry Grant, you got Damien Cook, who just lost his Kangaroos jersey. You got Appy moving to the Tigers. They didn't win last year. Wouldn't be surprised to see Freddie make a change there. Which wouldn't shock me. Yep. Mate, another guy I've got written down here. I'm very high on him. I don't think I'll start with him now because other things have presented themselves. But Jaden Brayley, mate, I really don't think they're... I would seriously be considering Jaden Brayley over Robson. You save 80 grand. He's priced at a 58 average from last season where it took him 8 weeks. I think he played 8 games. It took him 3 games to get his match fitness. Yeah. In those last 5 games, he averaged 70. I mean, he's got a full preseason now. Pretty confident he'll be an 80-minute hooker. I think Kurt Mann will be their utility. I think he'll sub on for Adam Elliott, play a bit of 13 like he did last year. I think if you're looking for someone other than those big guns, sort of a mid-range sort of guy, I reckon people are sleeping on Brayley over Robson.
Priced on a 58-point average, you said?
Yep.
I just don't see any upside in Jaden Brayley, which obviously it's there in Harry Grant. There's upside in Reece Robson. There's upside in Damien Cook. Now, I know the argument is that Brayley's a lot cheaper and he's that middle tier. He just, I don't know, Knight's a bit of a basket case. With Ponga at 5'8", how much this year? So last season, he didn't really have halves to work with, even at the back end when he came back and started running the ball a little bit more. He's now got KP and Jackson Hastings, who are going to demand a lot of ball. Does he just dish early a lot to them? I think he probably does. I love him as a footballer. I just think he's more of that rock-solid 55. I think he's priced around about his average. Maybe he bumps that 58 up to 65. But is that enough to start with him? I don't think so.
Yeah. I think he's been slept on. As I said, there's been other options that have appeared, and I'll be going them instead.
It's funny when you...
But I rate Brayley over Robson 100%.
How much more expensive is Robson?
He's 80K more expensive. I think you saw the absolute peak of Robson last year. I think you saw Brayley without a preseason come back in a shithouse team And in his last 5 games, he averaged more points than Robson. He averaged 5 more points than Robson throughout the season, playing in a top 4 side.
Yeah, I'd prefer Robson. I can see in your head, like I can see your mind ticking over. Last year, if I said something to you with your poor SuperCoach credentials, you'd be like, all right, I'll just listen to him and follow him. And it led you to a good season. This year, I can just see you going, fuck you. Like, if you say something, I'm going to do the opposite just to piss you off. Like, I finished higher than you last year. I can see that going through your mind.
Fuck, I'm already in your head, mate. Good God. Mate, let's have a look.
I'm not in your head, and that's a good thing.
Let's have a look at Reid Marnie. He moves clubs. He's arriving at the Canterbury Bulldogs. Priced at a 55 average based on last season, 574K. I don't know. He's got less dominant halves now, which I've heard the argument from people. We don't know his exact minutes. But his last 5 weeks of 2022, he averaged 38 points. So, mate, maybe he's a little bit cheaper than what he should be, but I think this whole team is centered around getting Matty Burton the ball. Reid Marnie, I can't do it.
I won't be doing it, but like I'd go Marnie over Brayley. Like I just think so highly of Reid Marnie as a footballer. He's got that huge base. Well, he's got a good base, I should say. What was he? Yeah, it was okay last year.
His base goes up and down.
It does go up and down, yeah. I see him coming out for the Dogs this year and making 40 tackles a game. And then the one you touched on there was that, well, you said less dominant halves maybe. The game plan will be around getting Burton early ball, but I don't think it'll be getting Kyle Flanagan early ball. At Para, he had Dylan Brown and Mitch Moses he had to get ball to. So I can see him taking on more this season in attack for them and running the ball a lot. So, yeah, I won't be starting with him, but he's a guy with a bit of upside. He's got a big score in him, and I don't think he's the worst pod.
Yeah, I'm just not convinced on his minutes. And obviously, when we get to round 1 and we see their team, I'll have a better idea. But
You don't think he'll play 80?
I'm not sure if he will, mate. You look at last year, like I was watching Jeremy Marshall-King, and like he had a really good season, and it would get to the 60th minute, and he'd be going fine. He'd walk off the field. He wasn't puffed or anything, and they'd take him off every single week. I know they're at different classes, but I just wonder if Canterbury are. I'm hearing that Josh Reynolds, there's a really good chance that he could be in this side. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some time at 9 there.
Okay.
I think they'll go for the more impact of Reid Marnie rather than playing for 80. But
I reckon he'll play 80.
Yeah, I don't know, mate. I think he's shown that throughout a season he can't handle 80. His output drops massively.
Yeah.
That's my worry. Yeah. But anyway, we'll see how it plays. Yeah, I don't want him anyway. Yeah, we're arguing over nothing here. One guy that I think is interesting and that a lot of people are very keen on, Aaron Clark. Dual position, have him at hooker or 2RF. I've eased off. I was very high on him last year, but when I think I like him more as a footballer than a SuperCoach player. I've worked out. Yeah. Which may or may not have been exactly what you said last year. But anyway, 47 average. I had a look at his 4 weeks where he played 13 towards the back end of the season. 59 average, which is fantastic. Played just about the same minutes in all those weeks, and he went 84, 74, 46, 35. Obviously, he didn't have a preseason as a 13. He is going to this year, so those things will change. But that's a bit of a red flag to me.
Yeah, it'd just be, as you said, it's just a big gamble to play off. And I just don't trust a thing that the Titans are going to do. Like I just said, and Holbrook up there, they said they've gone early on what their spine's going to be. Is that going to change? They went early on saying the role for Clark last year. I need to see what's going to happen with that club for the first 3 to 5 rounds. So their entire team, probably outside of Dave Feeder, I think it's just going to be a watch for me.
And I also look back to last year and I go, fuck, when he was at 13, he looked really good. That team was a shambles and they were begging for someone to take any form of control whatsoever. You got Foz in there now. I don't know. You've got Brimo, you've got a few Campbell in there. You've got Tanner Boyd, who's reportedly going to be there. I wonder if there's going to be enough points around for Aaron Clark to...
There's potential, sure.
Potential, 100%.
It's a big gamble.
Yeah. Speaking of Titans, let's go to his teammate, Tanner Boyd. Peter Bedell reported the other day that he will be the halfback. Holbrook has come out and said that he will not be. They, of course, haven't picked their side. That'd be outrageous, but kind of did that last year. So I question that, to be honest with you. I don't know. I find it... I'm leaning towards he probably will be the halfback, I think. I think that Fafita will be on his edge. If he is named at 7, he's priced at a 37 average based on last year. You look at his last 5 games of last year, he had a 60-point average. I've spoken about this on a few shows we've already done. Granted, his run last year, have you got it in front of you?
Yep.
Any chance? It was pretty easy if you can go through those games, Timmy.
So he had 35 against the Storm in round 21, then went Manly, Dragons, Knights, Warriors. So it was a soft draw to finish.
4 sinking ships.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my only question mark, but I do really like Tanner Boyd.
That run, he didn't really put points on anyone good except the Raiders, 88 points. And, he had I think it was a try. Oh, no, it might have had a try in there.
Yeah, I think he had a try and a field goal in the last game is what it was.
Okay,
yeah. Mate, at 384k, halfback hooker, I don't mind it. If he was 500k, I'm not. It's price that has me interested. And as I said before, we can pick the argument apart of combinations again. If I'm going to have Fafita, I don't mind taking the punt on Tanner Boyd there at hooker.
Yeah, I can see the appeal. Playing against that, the argument is that is he there in round 2, in round 3, in round 4? Like, how quickly do they flip if they lose games? The first 2 games of the year we touched on it earlier, but the Tigers and Dragons, they're nice games, but they'll be up for it defensively early on. So, look, there's a lot of boxes ticked.
Yeah.
But there's just something there. I don't know what it is that says trap. But as you said, a dual goal kicking. I'm at this stage very set on my hookers of Smith and Grant, and then at half I'm like, I'm not going to sit Cleary. It'd probably be at this stage sitting Nico for him. I'm like, oh. Yeah,
I wouldn't be sitting one of my halves. I'm considering sitting Grant for him.
Yeah.
And trying to make that up there. But I think he's a classic, very close watch in trials.
Yeah, big time.
See how they're shaping up.
I'm not putting a line through him, but at this stage, it's a no.
Yeah. Mate, what about these 2 Penrith hookers? So we got Mitch Kenny and Sonny Luke. Mitch Kenny coming in at 310k, Sonny Luke 234k. So both very cheap. Mitch Kenny's at a 30-point average. I see a lot of people very keen on Mitch Kenny, and I guess it comes down to what your mindset is about his role. Personally, I think his role will be almost exactly the same as what we saw last season. He'll start at hooker for the first 25, 30 minutes, take the punch out of it. I think you'll see Sonny Luke come onto the field, and then I think Mitch Kenny will jump back on, playing a bit of a 13 middle sort of role. I went through his numbers. Well, let me ask you this first, actually. How many minutes do you think Mitch Kenny will play next year? What have you got in your mind?
Yeah, similar. I think he plays the first 25.
Yep.
I'm thinking out loud here. And then I think Sonny Luke comes on and probably finishes the first half at hooker. Kenny's off, probably the first 20 of the second half. And then I think Kenny probably comes on for the last 20. So I'll be looking at maybe 45 to 50. Maybe he plays an extra 5-10 there in the middle rotation. So, yeah, I'd probably say 45 to 50.
His average last year when he played 40 to 60 minutes was 36.
Yeah.
I don't get the hype. No. I also think with Sonny Luke, and I made this mistake a couple of weeks ago, I think people are looking at Sonny Luke and going, oh, he's this kid that's coming in, they'll ease him in. He's 26 years old.
Right, there you go.
He has played a lot of reserve grade footy. He's not this teenager that they're bringing in that they're going to... He's played a lot of footy. The opportunity just hasn't been there at Penrith.
He's physically prepared.
He's physically prepared, yes. So I don't think it'll be... I personally think when he comes on, he'll play the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And I reckon they'll bring, as you said, bring Mitch Kenny on last 2025, but I think they'll bring him on as a forward. So you have a look. He's got no creative stats in him. He's got no upside realistically. You saw when he was starting in those games last year, let's be honest here, Penrith's attack was clunky in the first 25 minutes, but they just wanted to get through that first 25 minutes and keep Appy fit. I think it'll be the exact same game plan. I reckon those that are going Mitch Kenny... I reckon you could make less than 100K over 10 weeks here.
Yeah, I won't. The only reason I'd consider him is if he was named at hooker and there was no Sonny Luke on the bench.
Yes.
Even then, I'd still be like, something doesn't add up.
Doesn't add up.
Sonny
Here.
Luke's so good. So, he's a no for me for now.
And I thought it was pretty, as I said, Penrith looked clunky last year when he started in the 9. I personally think you could see a bit of frustration between Jerome Luai and Nathan Cleary in those big games when he was there. So I can't see him playing huge minutes there.
And even then, it's like he's on it based on a 29-point average. Cheese is a 45-point average. It's not that much more.
Yeah. Knock down 100K. We're looking at Sonny Luke at 234K. That is at a 22 average. I think he plays about 50 minutes. That would be my guess. Whether he plays that week 1 or whatever, I'm very confident by round 4 or 5 he's playing 50 minutes. Could be more, but I reckon I'd have it about that 50 minutes mark. He's got huge upside in attack. 234K is cheap as chips. I just worry that with Appy gone, I think they might just try and simplify his job a little bit. Just get the ball to Cleary and to Luai. So I know he's got attacking upside and he's a fantastic ball runner. I question how much we're going to see of it and how much do you have to see of it in 50 minutes to buy him.
I can see him already being one of them ones that just gets away from us because he'll come on and he might start in 30 minutes, then he might go to 40 and then 50 and he might build his way up to 60 or 70. But by the time that happens, he'll just be this slow-burning cow who, before you know it, he's just crept his way to 350 to 400K. And then just as he gets the 60 to 65 minutes needed to buy, you're like, well, now he's 350, 400K. I'm like, he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone, but he hasn't really hurt me.
Yeah.
I think you'll be able to make more money elsewhere in that time. So the 2 Penrith 9s, I'm not even considering either of them. Well, as you said, if only one of them's named round 1 or whatever, different conversation.
If one of them goes down injured pre-season, sweet.
The beauty of the Penrith Panthers, we said this last week, and I'm very excited to watch these 2 hookers in the role they play. They play a World Club Challenge, which is proper rules, 17 players, 10 interchanges. You'll get to see how they're going to run.
That's massive, isn't it?
It's huge. It's fucking huge. And I think there'll be a lot of people that'll be taking Mitch Kenny out of the side after that.
And alternatively, if one does go down injured, the other one probably becomes the hottest player in SuperCoach for round 1.
100%. Yeah. If it's Sonny Luke, I still don't think it's Mitch Kenny. But they have got other young hookers there who are in this Sonny Luke sort of mould. I just don't think Mitch Kenny's ever going to be a super relevant guy, personally. We have got a couple of questions. The first one comes from Max V. Josh Hodgson to get 80 minutes. Saw a picture of Josh Hodgson the other day. Looks like he's been eating dumbbells for fucking breakfast for the last few months. He looks like a monster. Little Ryan Madison Jr. Obviously a big fan of him.
Oh, of course.
As a bloke, yeah.
Oh, as a bloke, what he's done for the Raiders over the years. So there'll always be a soft spot in my heart for Hodjo. Yeah, look, I've had a look at him for sure. He's priced on a 36-point average. The thing is, you sort of think he's never actually been that good at SuperCoach. You think with all his attacking stats and that role he played at the Raiders where he was the playmaker, he was the creator in the side for like his whole time in the NRL at that club. He averaged 63. That was all the way back in 2018. After that, 54 in 2019, 42 2020, 52 in 2021. So, you know, that's it. He's cheap, but he now goes to Parramatta where he's coming off an ACL injury. He's, 33 years old or something? 34?
Yep, 33.
33. I can just see him, especially early on, it'll just be get out there and just dish to Brown and Moses. He won't overplay his hand because he won't be allowed to like he did at the Raiders. And I just, also coming off an ACL injury at that age, does he play 80 minutes? Who would be the 14 there that might take a few minutes off him?
Mitch Ryan.
I think they'll want him to be an 80-minute hooker, and I think he will be, provided he comes back from the ACL, but it might take to around 5 or 6 to do that, in which case...
Big ask.
Is it? Why? He's done his whole career.
33 coming off... Yeah, but he hasn't been 33 coming off an ACL his whole career.
Yeah.
He's played one game of footy in 2 years. It's just under 2 years, but it's
yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a big ask for him to be 80 minutes.
I think as long as he comes back from the injury okay, I think he will be. But as I said, I don't think it'll be till round, five earlier. So, but regardless, I don't know how much upside's in him anyway, so to know.
And I also question, if you wanted a guy to just pass the ball from the deck and get it to Mosen, why would you go for Hodgson? Sam Verrills was on the market. That's the other thing. I just think that if you're going to have Josh Hodgson on your side, he's a very crafty ball player. I think you have got to utilise it to some extent. And if so, I don't want to make him 55 tackles.
He's never done that, yeah. But I get your argument.
So
he's never had the base of big hookers, even as an 80-minute player. He's got his...
But if I'm playing Parramatta through the middle, I'm going at him all the fucking time. I want to tire him out. Yeah. And I just don't think you can... I don't know. I'm not convinced on him. I know the price is good, but I don't think it'll be worth anyone's while. Another guy that's interesting and coming from one of the great ats of all time, at Uppercut Your Dad, one of my favourites, got a feature solely because of that. Appy, yes or no? Not a guy I could consider. What are your thoughts?
You could. No, not going from the best team in the competition to the Tigers, who... The squad looks great. Roster's good, but I just want to see it first. I want to see them, how they pan out. He's got... that Penrith outfit was so in sync with everything they did. The Tigers are going to take time to hit their straps, if they do. Appy will play a big role. He will play... I suppose the upside is that he will play a more substantial role in attack than he did at Penrith. He'll run more, he'll create more, because he'll have Brooks and Dewey. He'll give enough ball, but he'll be looking to play make. So he's just a big price, new club, Tigers.
Does he have the cattle?
Does he have the
cattle? At the end of the day, we've seen him playing behind the best ruck in the comp for the last 2 or 3 years. So, if you get him and he does well, credit to you. Happy for you. Not for me, though. Mate, is there any other... mate, when I have a look through this list of hookers, there's so many guys that I think are overpriced. Like, for example, a Blake Brayley, he's coming off a career year. I don't think I could go near him at 600K. Jeremy Marshall-King at 600K. Not a hope in hell. Lachlan Croker is Lachlan Croker. Sam Verrills, I think he's a little bit overpriced. Yeah. I think he's a tremendous player. I love him. But SuperCoach-wise, he's never been a great player. Wade Egan is Wade Egan. Mate, Chris Randall arrives at the Titans and almost 500K. Jacob Little, even if he lands an 80-minute role for the Dragons, which I don't think he will, he's at 460K. New Brown's at 460K. Yeah. There's a lot of Tommy Starling. He's obviously a little bit higher than what he was last year. And I think the other thing with Appy as well, I think that Appy played his best football when he wasn't playing 80 minutes at the Panthers. Do the Tigers run with a Jake Simpkins? Do they maybe go with 2 hookers?
Possibly.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
They've probably got the pack that they can afford to. So there is no one else really jumping out at me. Turpin at sub 300. If it works out that the Roosters maybe play him at 50 minutes at hooker, I'll look at him. But even then, I don't think that'll be enough for him. Yeah,
I would be surprised if my round one hooking combination changes.
Yeah,
between now and then.
The only other one that I think could be interesting as a little cheapie, and look, he has had so much potential for so long, but he's been injury fucked year on year on year. Nathaniel Roach arriving at the Manly Seagulls. If he finally fulfills his potential at 216K, maybe, but it's the longest of longest shots.
Jag's a starting spot, yeah.
But I think maybe he could get a bench spot, potentially.
Yeah.
But I'm not confident in that either.
That's it. Maybe further down the track, Blake Moser, one of your boys, Ray Stone's dual second row. So I think anyone starting with him will be doing so in the second row. So yeah, I think we've touched on all the main ones there, mate.
Yeah, if something does happen to Jaden Brayley, it'll be the biggest talking point of the week. But Jaden Beryl will come into that side, and he will be an absolute must-have. But I don't see him getting into the side.
And that's the beauty of pre-season, isn't it, mate? Any injuries throughout the not any. There will be a lot of injuries during the pre-season. We know it, and some of these blokes will just go whack to the top of the priority list.
And if something was to happen to Brayley, and you could bring Beryl in, I'd be telling you to downgrade Grant.
Exactly.
Because you make 400K off this guy.
And that's how, as I said, with injuries to come, that's how quickly it changes.
So much can change.
Yeah, so Grant to Beryl, if he's an 80-minute hooker, 600K in the bank. Like, you nearly have to do it.
Yeah. Mate, anything else on hookers? Anyone else you want to touch on?
All good, mate. I think it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
I think we're covered. Yeah, guys, as we said off the top, thank you to Blue Wealth Property. They make investing in property easy for you. So reach out to myself or Timmy, or just contact Blue Wealth Property directly on their website or on social medias. Kempy's got his 50-hour sale, 50% off on the 1st of February. So be there to get stuck into that. We will be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Another episode of Beers and Break Evens, where we're going to be going through... what are we going through? We're going through
halves, mate, I think.
halfback and 5'8". Yes. So that'll be halfback 5'8". And is that all we're doing?
That was a Fatty Vorton special right there.
I've shot a complete. I've got it directly in front of me. We'll be going through halfback and 5'8". That's all we'll be doing. Yeah. So we'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Also, make sure you go and follow the SuperCoach playbook or subscribe on social media. We'll make sure you're the first comment so people can come down and slap subscribe.
You're a good man, Guru.
Star of the show. I know you don't believe me. I do, thankfully, so it's okay. Thank you, guys. We'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m.